Brilliant.
Perfect. Switched around, you record it, present it. So hi guys, welcome to this fortnight's B2B Marketing Shizzle. Every fortnight we come together with a group of over 100 people now, people in the room, and then we record the session of the experts from the group. And then we share it on YouTube, getting decent kind of views from YouTube there, so people are tapping into there. This fortnight we've got Rob Lee, and he's going to be talking about all things smartphone and storytelling. So over to you, Rob, and we'll ask questions at the end.
Many thanks for the intro, Ed. Hi everyone, my name is Rob Lee. I am from Branded Culture Videos. We are a new rebrand of a production company, and Dan is our head of production. He's the filmmaker, documentary maker. My speciality has been training people in smartphone digital storytelling. We work directly with organizations, corporates, but we also work with third sector and local authorities as well, just to really kind of help them optimize how they can create content internally. Are we going to have to do next slide, please, aren't we, Dad? Yeah, thank you. So in terms of how we operate, we have three broad services. We start off with Activate, which is you shoot and you edit. So we train organizations and local authorities how to create content with a smartphone to really start to activate their own social media, get an idea on the sort of stories they could shoot, and then it's pretty much over to them to shoot and edit themselves. If an organization starts to come across a lot of content that they can't keep up with, we have a collaborate option, which is you shoot and we edit. So it's an edit only job, but the benefit for that is because we are working with organizations long term, we're able to identify longer term stories. So if they've got kind of an end of year presentation or report that they really want a video to bring to life, then we're best placed to kind of really up the quality of that. And then lastly, we shoot and we edit, which is you hand everything over to us. So we get a team of pros out for, an event, a product launch or something along those lines. Next slide, please, Ed. So we're going to talk specifically, and this is quite a brief kind of 15, 20-minute talk around and how you can actually get content for B2B marketing. So it's mainly around how to produce better quality and quantity of videos. So just getting an idea of what your smartphone can do, and some production ideas, and then really going on to some ideas for internal and external video comms. And then whether you're a marketer who wants to do that for your organization, or you want to do that yourself or, to really promote your services, I'll talk you through some ideas on how you can do that through video. Next slide, please, Ed. So limitations and benefits shooting with a smartphone. Just talking through a few of these. A lot of us are, especially since the pandemic, a lot of us are very, very confident, very comfortable creating content with your smartphone. Some of the limitations are that there is poor sound quality. Your smartphone microphone is omnidirectional. So if you are recording with it, it's going to pick up content from all around you, unless you've got a plug-in mic. I'll go through some of those options a little bit later. But in general, if all you're using is your smartphone, there is some poor sound quality. You've also got to establish there's less control over the image itself rather than with a DSLR camera. With a DSLR camera, you have lots of things like obviously lenses, etc., in which it enables you to control more. There's less of that over using a smartphone. It is hard to stabilize. I'm sure we've all seen video content of people walking around with events where you can spot every single time someone moves. It can be difficult, but again, there are some ways in which you can overcome that, and I'll go through some of that. And in general, in addition to the kind of poor sound quality, it's also generally quite poor in low light. There are some hacks in it, but nothing really beats having an external light source. Some of the benefits, it is portable and it is convenient. So most people have a smartphone on them at all times. Most people understand how to access the camera app fairly quickly. It's two cameras in one. So what we mean by that, it's got a front-facing and a rear-facing camera. So if you're doing lots of content, again, to kind of maybe for your own personal brand, self-presenting to camera, there is that option for you. And then the real benefit is apps and accessories. And I'll go through, again, a few free apps, paid apps, and then some fairly cost-effective accessories to help you up the quality of the content. Next slide, please, Ed. First things first, and then I can probably spend a half an hour talking about this. Obviously, we haven't got time on here, but just a couple of things to think about when it comes to your camera settings. This is on the iPhone. If you go to your settings and you click on camera, one of the key things to look at is how you're actually recording it. And you can see in the settings here in the middle picture, this is at 1080p, which is perfectly acceptable for most video content. If you hear the terms like, for instance, 4K, for instance, can I just, oh, sorry, I'm moving my mouse thinking it's going to be seen, but obviously Ed's showing it. Ed, are you able to just move your mouse down to the record slow-mo? No, don't go back up again, please. Thank you. And just move your mouse if you're able to in the center, record slow-mo. That's it. Perfect. Now, the key things to think about here is as you're recording your content, where's it going to be seen? So if you're going to be creating content that is going to be seen on a cinema screen, for instance, you're going to be recording in 4K. I generally record in 4K because I want the highest quality. But if your content is going to be shot on is going to be viewed on a smartphone, 1080p is perfectly acceptable. And the key things to think about when you record this, when you click on 1080p, you go to the next image there, which is format. And here's where that's important, is because then you start to realize it will show you how much space each of these video files is going to be used. So as you record, actually, no, if you see down priorities, sorry, I can't see on this screen. Basically on there, at 1080p, it will show you how much memory is going to be used for every minute of footage that you record. As you go up to 4K, you start to see the impact of that on your memory. So if you're someone who has who's constantly having to upload files away from your away from your camera phone because you're always running out of memory, you've got to think about how you're recording, especially if you're recording lots of content. But like I say, 1080p is perfectly acceptable. The other key thing to turn on that not a lot of people turn on, you'll see down on the down at the middle section is the grid. Now, what the grid does is it adds like a noughts and crosses board across your screen. And the reason that's important is because as you're recording, it allows you to start thinking about framing. Framing, there's something called the rule of thirds, which is thinking about the cross sections on that noughts and crosses board, and that's where you kind of want to place the action. And again, there's loads I can kind of talk around that, but in general, it allows you to start thinking about if you're creating content, for instance, if you're shooting content for social media, it allows you to start thinking about what the limitations of that social media are. So if you're shooting, for instance, vertical, or you're shooting horizontal. If you're shooting horizontal, but your content is going on Instagram Reels, for instance, it's going to be seen like that. So you're going to have two black bars down the end, or vice versa. So think about when you have your grid on, it allows you to start thinking about how to position people effectively. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ed. Okay, now equipment you can use. Now, this is all entirely optional, but this is what we recommend for instance, a lot of the young people organizations that we work with, because it's all really kind of fairly cost effective. This is like a small tripod. It's got it's very, very basic. It's about £7. If you're doing loads of kind of present to camera, self-shot content, absolutely ideal. Just plug your smartphone in there. It's got like octopus legs, so you can kind of put it on a railing or something different if you're wanting a steady shot somewhere. We've also got just another few things on kind of just keeping your camera steady. We've got something called this, which is like a tap grip. And what you do here is, where's my smartphone? You clip your smartphone in like so, and it allows you to hold your smartphone and click the button without touching the screen. So in terms of creating content that is steady, I mean, this is about 17 quid. This is actually ideal for it. We also use, these are rigs, which gives you a wider base of contacts. It's got several points at the top and bottom to add a light if you want, or a microphone. And again, I mean, this is 18 quid. Great for events. Great to just get that additional steady content. And then the last thing, if you really wanted to kind of go all out, you can get like a gimbal. This is motorized. All the controls are in on the hand. So this is actually, I think this just died yesterday. I haven't had a chance to recharge it. but you've got a little kind of control at the center, so you can do zooms just with keeping this steady. You can do pans, tilts, etc. And basically, if you're going through events and you're going to be walking about, this enables you to keep your smartphone incredibly steady. Mics. We've got like lav mics, is like a lapel mic. So if you're doing lots of interviews directly to people, that's probably around about between 20 and 40 quid. You can get really kind of decent lapel mics. These are called shotgun mics, so they're directional. That's, I believe, 40 quid. That's a Rode mic. Again, these are all sort of plug-in. And then another option you've got is these are called dual head interview mics. So if you're doing lots of content in which you're going to trade shows, for instance, and you want to get lots of talking heads, or you want to get lots of content with experts, these are great in terms of capturing the sound from both sides. Again, the downside to the smartphone is it's going to capture everything around it. With things like this, you're able to direct your smartphone to capture the content exactly, capture the sound exactly where you want it. So you're cutting out maybe some of the additional sound elsewhere. And then lastly, we've got lights. If you can't be seen, your video obviously is going to be a lot degraded in quality. Ring lights, anything from £10, £40, anything like that is acceptable. If you're doing self-shot content from your desk, we've also got these plug-in mics that are plug-in lights that are screwed directly into the top of the rig. These are LED lights, and I think this one was £27. So in terms of getting yourself kitted out, if you really wanted to do this yourself or you wanted to advise a client, we get a simple kind of kit together, including a bag, for about 100 quid. And with that, our brand new content creators have everything they need to get started and get creating content for their client or for the organization they work with. Can you do the next slide, please, Ed? Thank you. And then some production tips. Just a few things to think about when you're capturing content. Natural light. If you're creating content yourself, and I'm shooting here, so I've got a light or a window directly behind me, you're going to appear like a silhouette. Okay, it's not necessarily going to be the worst content if the light is fairly dark, but always try to have the natural light coming directly towards you. And especially when you're going to locations as well, have a look about where the natural light is, have a look at where the light source is as well. Are there any shadows that are being created? Are you seen at all? Is it distracting? We talked about sound and some of the ways that you can enhance the sound. But we always, when we're doing content, we try where possible to do 2 takes. And the reason is because, generally speaking, if you're in an event, you can't have control over what is around you. We did a shoot once in a basement, and right next to, on the outside, was a road in which there was a crossing. And every so often we just get to the end of a take and then we hear beep, 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 beep. We've got no control over that. Okay, so that's why we go for 2 takes, because it just means in the edit we've got better options. Think about any kind of humming or buzzing sound. Fridges are terrible for that. You might not pick it up when you're shooting it, but when you're in the edit or when you're viewing the video, that is something that could certainly take away from the experience from the viewer. Framing. When, again, easy to do when you're going to events is just get excited and just start creating content, but have a look at what's in the background. Are there any lights? Are there any door handles? Are there any trees coming or plants coming look like they're coming out the top of someone's head? Is there anyone in the background who's doing something that you don't want seen? I heard a tale of an organization that was doing a marketing campaign for a beer company, and they were doing an interview on a stage, and in the background there was someone with a beer from another company and it just, again, it's just thinking about what is in the background. If I haven't got control of it, can I just change the angle slightly just so I'm not capturing that? Movement. Think about how you can steady the video if you are moving around. So things like I say, the rig is better. It's not ideal. The gimbal is absolutely ideal if you're doing a lot of kind of tracking shots through an event. And lastly, focus. the camera, usually when you are going onto the camera app, what you have is an autofocus option. If you tap your screen, usually what you'll see is where a box appear on the screen when you tap it, and that will show what you are telling the camera to focus on. So if you've got a complex image, for instance, you've got something in the foreground, something in the background, and you want it only to focus on the foreground, tap the screen on exactly what you want it to focus on. And what it would do is if there's anything moving in the background, it won't shift the focus to the background. And this, again, this is really, really important in events. If you're doing shooting content at events, you've got no necessarily control over the background. Sometimes you've got people walking left and right. And what might happen is when you're capturing video, it might shift focus from the background to the foreground, which isn't the end of the world, but it can be a little bit annoying for you when you come to the edit. So just making sure that you prioritize the focus is certainly going to be something that helps your final product. Okay, and the next slide, please. So once you've got your content, just talking through some editing apps. On the left, we've got 2 free apps. On the right, we've got 2 paid apps. CapCut is kind of my go-to. I used to use Quik, Q-U-I-K, which is made by GoPro. They've now made that completely subscription only, so we don't recommend that anymore. It's a good app, but CapCut's far better. If anyone's on TikTok or anyone produces content for TikTok, you'll see lots of videos that will have created in CapCut at the end. So CapCut is a great app, free app, but there are loads of premium options that you can purchase if need be. Loads of transitions, loads of additional music, loads of templates that you can use. InShot's a great alternative. It hasn't got quite as many paid upgrades, but again, it's a completely free app and available, I believe, on most phones. I'm a bit wary sometimes of saying that because sometimes people come up with a phone and we just get that kind of in a training session. We'll get that. Didn't realize that app wasn't available on that type of phone. But generally, CapCut and InShot I have not seen any issues with any phones not able to download them. If you start getting a bug for it, 2 paid apps that we definitely recommend is Adobe Premiere Rush, which is available under the Creative Cloud. So if you've got a subscription to that, that is a good kind of mobile video editing app. But LumaFusion is kind of the king of paid apps if you really want to do some more complex edits. So it gives you, I think it's 5-track timelines, which basically means you can have all of your content in one place and then go in the timeline and decide to do a complex edit on that. That is I think currently $29.99. It's a one-off fee, so it's not a subscription like Adobe Premiere Rush. So that's something I definitely recommend if you get the editing bug. Next slide, please. So a quick run through of content, your smartphone, the tools. Like I say, I normally spend a lot more time talking about this, but we're kind of limited on this call. That's all great in terms of understanding some of the things that you can do with a smartphone. The challenge that a lot of organizations and freelancers normally have is, well, okay, I know how to do it, but what do I do on a regular basis? So one of the things I run on a very regular basis is ideation exercises to really get people thinking about the sort of stories that they can create on an ongoing basis, either for themselves or for their clients. And this is a template I found on a TED Talk by someone called Ashley Fell. It's called Storytelling in the Digital Era. And she works in data in Australia. And her job is basically to translate large amounts of data into visual stories. And she uses this format, which is the 4 eyes. So when I'm working with clients who want to get an idea of, look, I really want to know what sort of stories I could tell, I run them through an ideation exercise that basically goes through each of these 4 ideas, and I give them prompts. So just to give a quick summary of how this works, a story that can capture and keep somebody's interest. So if you think about the sort of interesting stories that you could tell, interesting facts around an organization, what is the other thing on here? Interesting things our product does, for instance. Instruct is, can you instruct viewers in a process or speciality? So think through a process a customer needs to go through, a niche that you specialize in, how to sign up for an update newsletter. A really good example that I always used for a niche, for instance, is blanking on its name now. They did a company called NASDAQ. They did on their Snapchat and Instagram accounts. They did a regular story feature, video story feature called Market School, and it was establishing themselves as subject matter experts. So what they did was they took one common phrase in the stock market, and every single week they had their their stockbrokers to explain that. And again, it's all in short form video format, one video a week, really, really simple. And by going through because I had a chat with a couple of people that were involved in it, and basically they said we just brainstormed what are some of the common phrases that we could explain to people in a short form style. We came up with 20, 30 ideas just in our first session. So if you're working for longer term content, like Instruct is a really good idea. Then we got involve. So can you involve your staff, suppliers, audience in your content? Testimonials is probably the easiest and best way to use video content in the involve kind of category. After you complete a job, can you just get somebody on video? Can you just shoot them? Just sort of thinking through about what was the pain point they had, what did you bring to it, and how did they feel about the whole experience? Are there any good news stories? Are you going to run a marathon, for instance? Have you just got a qualification, something along those lines? And then any sort of any partners or anything like that or any partners like that you can kind of create some sort of story around as well. And lastly, inspire. Can you move someone to action? Motivational content for peers. You see it all over LinkedIn. Here's how I kind of structure my day. Usually a really good kind of simple kind of content to create through video. What about, Ed, for instance, runs a regular event. So could he do a video around how do you sign up for an industry event? What can people expect from this event? How do you request more information on your services? This is usually things that people put down in text format on their social media or on their website. So can you think about ways in which you could actually make that more visual through a video tutorial, for instance? Can you do a small video clip that kind of walks people through that process? And just the last kind of thing to think about is that, a lot of people are quite nervous about creating video for the first time. They don't know where to start. They don't feel confident about being seen on video. They're not sure about their presentation style. And what we try to do when we work with clients is to try to find an in point. The easiest in point, for instance, is voiceovers. Is if your camera's not necessarily directly on you, can you provide a voiceover that gets you started on video? We worked with an organization that was campaigning for the 4-day week trial last year, and what we did with them was we basically said, well, why don't you produce a voiceover that outlines what the 4-day week campaign is, what the benefits are, and how people can introduce it into their workplace. The first set of files that we got through, it wasn't great because they did a voiceover in a empty room in which you could hear the sound was bouncing off the walls. So it's very, very echoey. And then small little things to get you going. It sounds stupid, but if you put a coat or a blanket over yourself when you're recording, all of the sound goes directly into the microphone. Then all of a sudden they realize, well, this is really upping our confidence in how we can actually create this sort of content going forward. So whatever your starting point is, really encourage you, really invite you to think about, let's give that a go. Let's start off maybe with a collage of still images with a voiceover and move up from there. If you really feel confident, if you wanted to start with presenting content like this, CapCut now has a feature that enables you to put a script going down the screen as well. So if you're thinking, okay, I feel like I really want to get going on this, but I don't really know what I'm going to say, and regularly, you can do that through CapCut as well. I think, Ed, you're giving me the wrap-up sign.
I'm giving you the wrap-up sign. We haven't had time for too many questions here. But look, there's so much awesome content. Thanks, Rob. And
no worries.
This is a short, sharp session we do for half an hour, but I'm sure you've got 3 hours of content you could give everyone. And look, I suppose, you know, a question for me, yeah, £100 sounds amazing in terms of, you know, enabling you to have the kit that can produce decent video. Is there any limitations on the phone specifically? So do you need the latest iPhone together with that kit to get the best level of performance? Or do you think there isn't like that much of a step up to, you know, what am I rocking here, like the 10 as opposed to kind of 13?
I was working last week with two young people from the GLA who had one had an iPhone 9, I believe, and one had a Samsung. I'm not sure what version it was, but it was a fairly older Samsung. And in terms of the content that was made, it's fine. It's good. It is all about storytelling and them getting comfortable being visual storytellers. The simple fact is that the more up-to-date phone that you get, the more features you're going to have on it. This is an iPhone 13, which has three cameras on, three lenses on, which basically gives me more options in terms of what I'm able to capture. It's not necessary though, if you want to get started with video content. So you can always upgrade, but I think the key is in learning those skills, and you can learn all of these skills on an iPhone 10.
Cool, thank you. We are kind of at time, but I suppose a good question for me maybe to wrap things up is where you know, this is user kind of generated content or, you know, non-professional use of content creation. Where do you see that is the best use, and then where do you think you sometimes need to hand the baton over for more of a professional level of delivery?
Yeah, you see lots of organizations do kind of life at accounts on Instagram. So if you want to kind of create that content that is more kind of genuine, authentic, it looks like something the audience could create. That's a good starting point. But there are people that are creating films now using a smartphone. So there's no kind of cap or limit to where you could take this content. A lot of it comes down to experience and the scope of what you're trying to create. So if you're, like I say, if you've got, like, for instance, an organization that's got a really big end of year report that a video could help, or you're going for a multi-million-pound bid and you know a video can actually support this, then it makes sense to invest in getting some pros in. But you know, that's kind of a how long is a piece of string question, because it really depends on the circumstances. All I'd say is I would always encourage people to try it themselves to start with. And once you start to realize this might be something that in which there's a lot invested in the success of this, then consider bringing an expert in and some pros in.
Makes sense. All right. Well, thanks so much. As I say, I'm sure there's lots of other content you provided, but thanks for that summary. As usual, we'll share this with everyone in the group. And then the next session is in a fortnight. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ed.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.